I know one of the most frustrating things with doing a new lawn or a lawn renovation or patching your lawn is getting that seed to germinate. And so we're going to talk about the germination triangle I came up with as a way to understand what that seed needs to germinate. Let's get to it. I'm the lawn engineer, and today we're going to talk about grass seed germination. So there's a lot of information on the YouTubes. There's a lot of people telling you, you must do this, you must do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. I want to provide a deeper understanding of things so you can decide what you want to do, what would work best in your situation. And most importantly, recognize snake oil, recognize those snake oil salesmen, and prevent those people from separating you from your hard-earned money. So today we're talking specifically about grass seed, but recognize this will apply to any seed when you're trying to grow a plant. Plants in general are amazing on the earth, but in particular seeds are pretty unique. So they've been programmed to require very specific parameters for them to actually sprout and come to life and create a seedling. And that is nature's way of ensuring that seed, when it decides to turn into a plant and grow, the things in place for it to survive are there. So it's all about survival. I've come up with the germination triangle to explain this. All three components of this germination triangle must be in place for germination to occur. So these are the parameters that seed is monitoring, and when check, 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 all three of these things are met, it knows it's safe for me to germinate, and I've got a very good chance of survival. All right, the first side of our triangle we're going to talk about is seed to soil contact. So this is just as it says, that seed must sense on its outer skin there that it's in contact with soil. So if we think about this, obviously a seed and a plant has the part that's above ground and the part that's underground. So the underground part is the root. If that grass seed is hung up in other grass blades, if you're overseeding or something, and that seed germinates, the root will have no ground or soil to go into, and it will die. So this is ensuring that when that seed germinates and it puts down its root, it has soil to go into. If this is not in place, rule of thumb is 50% contact with soil. If that is not met, the seed will not germinate. So what is 50%? So going from left to right here, the first one we're looking at is 10%. So that's if you sprinkle seed on some hard packed soil. Basically, the rounded nature of that seed is just touching that soil. That is not good enough. That seed will not germinate. It recognizes, hey, I don't have enough soil here to put my root into. I'm staying put. I'm not coming out of this thing. In the middle there, we can see what 50% contact really looks like. And that is that the seed is pressed into the soil a bit, and we can see there's contact with 50% of the seed. Really, the best case scenario, what we want to achieve, whatever seed wants, is 100% contact. So that is soil completely surrounding that. So that seed knows that's its best chance for success. Alternatively, we don't want to get too deep. Every seed has a specific depth that it wants to be at. So that in this talking about seed and grass seed, so that grass blade can push through what's above it and get to sunlight. A bunch of different ways we can create that best case scenario where that seed has 100% contact. Here are the most popular ways. One is topsoil, so either making the soil very loose by tilling or raking before you put the seed on, and then having some way of raking or dragging that covers the seed then with that topsoil to provide that 100% contact. But other very popular methods are spreading your seed on a soil and then covering it with peat moss, sand, paper mulch. So you might say, well, sand, I don't really think of that as soil, or especially paper mulch. But those simulate that seed to soil contact. So soil is a loose term when we're coming to this, but the seed doesn't really know any difference between paper mulch or topsoil. Peat moss and sand, again, those are soils. They're not classic soils as we think about it, but those are still soils. All right, moisture. So water must be available consistently in contact with the seed. So that outer skin of the seed, just as it senses, hey, I'm in contact with soil, it also is monitoring, is there moisture available for me when I germinate, that I will have the resources I need to survive. If it's dry like a desert, that seed is going to stay put and not do anything, and it's going to wait for that water to become available before it germinates. So water available, what does that mean? As I said, it needs to be in contact with the seed. So we can see, moving left to right again, we're going from worst case scenario to best case scenario. So in the worst case scenario, we could have a lot of ground moisture, but if the first ½ inch of soil where that seed is located does not have moisture and is dry, that seed will still not germinate. It needs to be in direct contact with the seed. So in the middle here, that is enough. So again, I'm using our 50% seed to soil contact. If that topsoil, that top layer of soil is saturated with water, that'll be enough for the seed to germinate. However, the best case scenario, again, this plays in with the seed to soil contact. If that seed to soil contact is 100%, plus that soil is saturated with water, that is the best case scenario, and that will cause germination the quickest and the most uniformly across all of your seeds. Now, what are things commonly people do to improve this? So we can create that best case scenario and have moisture available all around that seed. So we can see some common ones from seed to soil contact: the paper mulch, the peat moss. Another common one is straw, and that does a couple things. It creates some shade for the seed to hold moisture in there after watering. But the other common thing with all of these is they're a sponge-like material that absorbs the moisture from the environment or from your irrigation and then gives it back to the seed and to the soil over time between those waterings to have a reservoir for that. Peat moss and the paper mulch are particularly good because they're in contact with the seed and give it directly back. The last side of our triangle is temperature, and what we're talking about is ground temperature or soil temperature, and that must be in the range for your particular seed. So as an example here, Kentucky bluegrass, the range is fairly wide, 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But if your soil is not in that range, the seed will not germinate. And so again, that is the programming in that seed to say, to know if it's 50 degrees, maybe it's late fall, and if I germinate now, I'm gonna get frozen right away, or it's spring and the risk of frost is still there, so it's not time for me to come out. It's just amazing how these little things know the conditions that need to be met for it to survive. So as we look at the worst case scenario to the best case, we can say even if the air temperature is 80 degrees, but our seed is in ground with a 55 degree Fahrenheit, we're talking bluegrass seed here, as I said, it will not germinate. That's not a good condition for the seed. And so we need to keep in mind what time of year. So we say spring and fall are the best times in the northern US to plant our grass seed, our cool season grass like Kentucky bluegrass. If we go too late in fall and our ground temperature has already fallen below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, we run the risk of that seed rotting in the soil over winter. So that's not a good scenario. Early in spring, if it's 55 degrees Fahrenheit, that normally will be okay. That seed will just sit and wait for the ground temperature to elevate above 60 degrees, and then it will trigger germination. But realize the germination time for that seed is not going to be what you read on the bag or on the typical soil. It's going to be delayed, and that clock does not start until that temperature threshold is met. So best case scenario is we're in the middle of that range. Okay or good is at the extremes of those range. So 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which, as we remember, on the edges of those range will cause germination, but it's not the ideal situation. Over on the far right is the perfect, where we're smack dab in the middle of that range with a 70 degrees F soil temperature. What is the bottom line of all this? The bottom line is, if you understand those three sides of the triangle, you can do almost an infinite number of combinations of things to cause seed germination. You don't have to use the store-bought spot repair. You can put your seed down and cover it with sand if you want to, if you're trying to level. You can use peat moss. Peat moss is one of my favorites because, as we showed, it handles a couple different sides of the triangle. So it will provide you seed to soil contact and also be the sponge-like material to give moisture back to the seed. So that's one great positive of peat moss. So one of the most common things you see out there is straw. Why is that? It's readily available, it's cheap, it's easy to spread. Peat moss is not the easiest to spread. The straw is easy to spread, and that is great at providing that moisture. It's a sponge-like material to absorb moisture and give it back in dry conditions. It provides shade, it has erosion protection, which we didn't talk about, but that's something else to consider when you're planting. But it does not provide that seed to soil contact. So that's where the edge goes to more of that paper mulch. And the peat moss, it's doing two of those things for you. All of these coverings do also help with temperature a little bit. So if you're adding a dark colored material over the top, that has the ability to absorb more sunlight and elevate the temperature of your grass. However, if you're in the hot part of the season and you're trying to reduce your soil temperature a little bit, that's where the straw comes into effect, where it provides a shade and it's a lighter material to reflect some of that sunlight. But at the end of the day, all of this said, if your seed does not germinate, you are missing at least one side of this triangle. It is very unlikely that you purchase bad seed. Now, I read comments before I buy things, and inevitably, if you're looking at grass seed, there will be a few comments on there. 1 star, this grass seed is terrible. None of it germinated. You're missing at least one side of the triangle. You did not get an entire batch of bad grass seed. Keep that in mind. Thanks for watching. If you find value in this stuff, please subscribe, hit the bell notification, hit the like button on here. It helps motivate me and do more of these videos. Again, I want to go beyond telling you, you should do this. This is the best way. Personally, I like peat moss. I've covered my grass seed with sand to get leveling properties and do some Kentucky bluegrass renovations. I hope you learn from what I did, take the pluses and minuses, adapt it to your situation. If you understand this seed germination triangle, the sky is the limit. You can do anything you want. Good luck out there. Adios.